Hey guys, okay, let's talk about 3.2 writing quadratic functions. So here is the vertex form of a quadratic function. We're going to use the vertex form because for writing quadratic functions of these type, if we know the vertex and we know any other point, then we just need to know if the parabola opens up or down. Then we can write the equation of the parabola. So let's look at this example here. Remember, here's our function here, right? Here's our parent function. So everything we have, we're going to put into this guy. So I've got my vertex here. That's my H and K, right? So here's my vertex. This is H, comma, K. So my H is -1, that's the X coordinate there, and my K is 5, that's the Y coordinate there for my vertex. So those just get plugged right into the equation. X minus H, if I plug a -1 in for H, minus -1 means +1. So that's why this is +1. And then plus K on the end, +5. Okay. It sure is, bud. Wow. It's big. Okay, so step 2, now that we have the vertex plugged into our equation, now we're going to put that point, this point up here, is going to go into our equation. So X is 0, our f of X or Y is 8. So where we have f of X, we put 8, our Y coordinate, it goes right there. And then our X right here, it's 0, so we plug in 0 right there. Look, we've got everything in this equation except for A. So our last step is to just solve for A. That'll give us every component that we need to write the equation of our. So this is just, yeah, oh my goodness, there's so many. So we've got all our components besides the A. So we're going to solve for A so that we can write our final equation, final quadratic function. And this is just solving, right? We're just solving for A. 0 plus 1 gives us 1. And then we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. So that gives us 3 equals A to 1 squared. Well, 1 squared is 1. And then we divide 1 from both sides. A equals 3. So we've got A equals 3. Now we have all the pieces that we need. So we're going to rewrite your final your final answer. We're going to write the equation with the vertex and A. So here's our original equation up here, right? F of X equals A times X minus H squared plus K. So we're gonna leave the F of X and the X in there. We're not gonna fill those out. So we knew that A equaled 3, so we replace A with 3. That's right, bud. And we knew our point here, our vertex. Our vertex was -1, 5. That's right, bud. That's right, bud. We knew that our vertex was -1, 5. So we've got our vertex in for our equation, and we figured out A. We've got our A in there for our. There we go. Another way to write these equations, if we're not given the vertex but are given 2 points and the axis of symmetry, then we can solve using systems of equations. Right? So remember that our equation, our quadratic function equation is f of X equals A x minus h squared plus k. So to write this quadratic function, we need a, we need h, and we need k. That's what gives us our final equation, right? So we need to find all of these components. If we're given our axis of symmetry, that's the line that goes straight through a parabola. If the axis of symmetry is x equals -5, well, what does that look like? Here's our coordinates, right? X equals 4, 5. Here's our axis of symmetry. That means this line is cutting a parabola in half, which means we know that our vertex is going to lie on that line, right? If our axis of symmetry cuts it right in half, then our vertex lies on that line. That means we know that h is -5. That's where we get that. So if our axis of symmetry was y equaled something, then we would have k. In this case, it's x equals something, which gives us the h. Okay, so we know h. So we're going to use that and our point here. Here's our point, and here's our axis of symmetry. 2 points on our axis of symmetry. So that means we know that h is -5. So we're going to use this and each point to find the k and the a that we need to finish writing this equation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our first point here. Here's our h equals -5, and there's the first point we're going to use. All right, well, we're going to plug that in to our equation here. Gives us our f of x is 7, so 7 equals a times our x is -8, -8 plus 5 squared, because our h is -5, right? And we know that it's x minus h, so minus a negative means plus a positive. So plus 5 squared, and then plus k, because that's what we're looking for. So when we reduce this, -8 plus 5 gives us -3. -3 squared is 9. So here's our reduced equation there. So, and then we just do the same thing with the other point, right? So we get two equations. This guy. So still h is -5, right? Still h is -5, but now we're using the other point to get our second equation. And we follow the same process, right? Here's x, so that goes in right here. Here's f of x, that goes in right here. Our h is -5, so that goes in right here. So when we reduce that equation, 5 plus 5 is 10, 10 squared is 100. Here we've got our second equation. Here's our second equation. So we have two equations where we don't know a or k, right? But we know that both of these equations are true for the parabola that we're trying to write the equation for. I can use a system of equations down here to solve for my a and my k. Here's my equations, right? So I can use these system of equations. I just did substitution to find my a and k. So check it out, system of equations, right? So that means, we'll do a light pink. So right here, I solve for k. Here was k. So if k equals this, then that means I can plug this in for k on my other equation. So that gives me 20 equals 100a plus, and that's where my k went, right? Right there. And k was right here, so 7 minus 9a. Now I only have one variable. I have a, which I can solve for. Awesome. So that gives me, when I combine my like terms, I have 100a and -9a. That gives me 91a plus 7. subtract 7 from both sides. That gives me 13 equals 91a. So I need to divide by 91, right? It gives me 13 over 91. So a is 1 over 7. Now that I have a, it's all downhill from here. I have my a, which means I can just substitute this back in to either equation will work. Either equation will work. The top one or the bottom one I can substitute my a value into to find k. So I just pick the bottom one. So 20 equals 100 times 1 over 7, which was a, plus k. Great, now I'm left with one variable. I just need to solve for k. Okay, so 100 times 1 over 7 is 100 over 7. That means I need same denominators, right? Because I'm going to be subtracting this from both sides. 20 is the same as 140 over 7. So then when I subtract 100 over 7 from both sides, that gives me 40 over 7. And that's my k. So I have all of my components finally. I have my h, I have my k, and I have my a. There we go. So now I just put those into my original equation. This guy up here. This guy up here. I have my a, I have my h, and I have my k. Okay, and then I just plug them in. Your homeworks are follow these steps pretty well. So if you can follow along with the steps here, most of them give you the vertex. There may be one or two that you need to do this process with the system of equations. I picked one that gave you fraction answers because I know that really freaks y'all out sometimes to see fractions, but they're just like, it's just like any other number. You can do it. The homework's not long at all. There's only a couple of problems. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know.